Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this week's XPM webinar. We do webinars every week at 11 o'clock Central, noon Eastern, on a variety of topics, depending on different things that our customers are interested in or hot topics that we see out in the Atlassian ecosystem. Today's topic is going to be Atlassian Enterprise Governance. We're going to focus on a number of things today. But the term governance is a very broad and sometimes undefined term. And so we like to take some time and kind of break down what we mean by governance, and particularly Atlassian enterprise governance. So before I get started, let me kind of break out these three words that actually are titling this webinar. First of all, Atlassian is the ecosystem of products that XPM is a partner for. That includes tools like Jira, Confluence, and other products. Enterprise is going to be your organization, and governance is going to be the way that we are helping your organization grow and scale in a safe way that is also going to be it's going to allow you to continue to grow in a way that's going to work best for what you do and what you do well. So that's what we're going to spend some time talking about today, is around this Atlassian enterprise governance. Before I jump in, though, I kind of want to give you an idea of where we are going to be going. We talk about governance from a 10,000 foot level, and then by the end of the webinar, we drive it all the way down to a practical level of how you actually can do a governance framework using Atlassian tools. So let me kind of give you a quick snapshot, a bit of a teaser, as you might say, of where we are going today. So let me jump over here. This is Jira. If you are familiar at all with the Atlassian ecosystem, you're familiar with Jira. And in this particular instance of Jira, we have built out a governance dashboard that is a way of tracking all of the different governance requests, activities, and things that are happening on a form of gadgets, so that we can see where things are, who's working on what things, why things are where they are, so on and so forth. Also, let me show you this page here. This is a Confluence page, of course, another major Atlassian product. And this is our Atlassian governance space. If you know anything about Confluence, it's a content portal for information and connecting people together. When you're dealing with Confluence, you need to organize your spaces in a way that works best for your company, whether it's a macro space that is going to be something that is providing important information for your entire organization, or a micro space like a personal space or an individual project space. The Atlassian governance space is an excellent framework to spread across your entire company open ideas, conversations, policies, structures around governance. And so what is in this Confluence space and why it's important to be in there is what we're going to be getting to as well when we get into the Confluence or the Atlassian enterprise governance structure. However, before we jump in, let me tell you a little bit about who we are. I usually do this later on in the webinar, but I do want to do it right off the bat right now, because we have a fantastic event happening next week, and I want to make sure that everybody is aware of it. But let me back up a little bit. XPM is a Platinum Solutions partner. Atlassian does a lot of things really well, but one of the things it does very well is it works with a partner network for all of the activities that are done to support clients. So if you were to reach out to Atlassian today and say, I need you to help us stand up a Jira instance, or help you to configure an Atlassian enterprise governance structure, one of the first things they would do is they would connect you to a partner like XPM. There are a series of partners around the world. There are different levels of partners. XPM is a Platinum Solutions partner, which is the highest level partner that there is. We can help you with licensing, training, configuration, consulting, customization, basically anything you need to do in the Atlassian ecosystem. Some of the hot topics that are out there right now are things like cloud migrations, things like ITSM solutions, and things like scaling Jira into a safe, scaled, agile platform. But one thing that I do want to connect you guys with directly is an activity and an event that we are doing next week. That's a special event. We do these webinars every week, but about once a quarter, or maybe 2 or 3 times a year, we have a special event, and one of those is happening next week. On our website, which is xpm.com, and I will I will leave this up there so you can copy that down and pull it up right now. On xpm.com, we have a bunch of information, but right on the main page, you're going to see this event that's happening next week. It is around the new and improved and evolved ITSM ITIL tool that Atlassian has called Jira Service Management. If you've been in the Atlassian ecosystem at all for the last several years, you know that there's always been a Jira Service Desk platform out there. Recently, Atlassian has acquired several new companies, evolved the product, and combine the product into a full ITSM suite that's highly collaborative. It is going to be where you will manage all of your ITIL activity, including incident management, problem management, change enablement, and things like that. There are a ton of new features and platforms out there around that, including Jira Service Management, Opsgenie, Status Page, Insight for managing CMDBs, databases, CRMs, and things like that. This is really huge, and it's going to be something you're going to see happening over the next 6 to 12 months, and it's going to be pretty explosive in the Atlassian ecosystem. If you want to learn more about this new functionality and tool, this forum that we're doing next week, August 24th, is going to be a place that you want to make sure you don't miss. Let me expand this here. You can register just by clicking sign up right there, but I want to highlight a few things. First of all, we have folks from Atlassian. One of the Atlassian's principal solution engineers, Paul Buffington, is going to speak at this forum. If you've ever been to an Atlassian summit, you have probably heard Paul Buffington speak, a fantastic speaker, and he is going to be talking a lot about why Atlassian moved to this ITSM platform and where they're going in the future. We're also going to have a testimonial from one of our customers who migrated off of ServiceNow to ITSM. He's going to be speaking as well. And several of the XPM folks are going to be showing you guys some high-level case studies in the tool, like incident management and things like that. You don't want to miss this event. It's going to be starting at 10:30 and going to 1:30 Central. There will be a number of opportunities for swag giveaways throughout the event, so we're going to have a lot of fun there as well. If you are interested in this and have time to do it, go to xpm.com right on our main page and sign up. Like I said, I usually don't put in such a big plug in the beginning of these webinars, but this is an unusual event that's going to be very really cool, and I don't want you all to miss it. Okay, let's get back to the webinar du jour, which is going to be around this Atlassian governance. Okay, so I am going to take this webinar from a 10,000-foot level and then drive it back down to where some of those teaser shots that I just showed you around the Jira and Confluence framework for governance. First of all, 10,000-foot level. What is Atlassian enterprise governance? Well, really, all of us have a company that hopefully is trying to grow and make money. This is what I like to call as our rocket ship, right? This is going to be what is going to take us to where we want to go. However, as we all know, rocket ships oftentimes cannot operate by themselves. They need a control tower. The purpose of the control tower is not to limit the rocket ship. The purpose of the control tower is not to impose upon the rocket ship particular policies or rules that are going to hamper its productivity or capability. No, the purpose of the control tower is to enable the rocket ship to balance the maximum efficiency and growth that it can do, while also helping to minimize risk and provide standard scaling activities that will allow the rocket ship to do the best it can do. As a result of the combination of the rocket ship and the control tower, you're able to do things like align strategies and improve processes and provide efficiency, all while continuing to grow and scale and make money, doing those things that you do best in your company. That really is a very crude and simplified review of what Atlassian enterprise governance should do. In a way to kind of help us remember this kind of quirky analogy, I've actually put together a series of words that, yes, of course, spell the word rocket, that really kind of define what this Atlassian enterprise governance is. First of all, representation. Representation is going to be an opportunity to make sure that your governance is not too top-heavy or heavy-handed. It's going to be an opportunity to make sure that the people that are running your rocket, the people that are making your company successful, and the people that are using Atlassian tools are also the ones that are deeply involved in the governance process. Openness. Openness is critical in so many things with business today, especially at the pace that business is growing and the efficiencies that we want to drive into our businesses. But it is also very important to have openness in the governance structure as well. We do not want anyone, even the brand new employee coming into our company, not being able to identify, research, learn, and know about our governance practices and policies. Coordination. Coordination is going to be the opportunity to build governance structures that work best with all teams and work together. Your governance model may be different. If you're a small company, you may just have one or two people that are managing your governance. If you're a mid-sized company, you may have an entire governance team, and we're going to talk about that when we get into the governance structure. If you're a large enterprise governance, you may have a hub and spoke system where you have a core governance team that's feeding out to multiple smaller governance teams in each of the divisions of your organization, okay? All of this demands that there be coordination. That coordination is going to require communication, but it's also going to require tools that help us to coordinate efficiently. We cannot add a bunch of additional meetings onto our calendars so that we can manage governance well. This is where the tools of Atlassian's ecosystem come in and help us tremendously. And we're going to talk about how you can build the framework of those tools so that coordination can be done really well and really efficiently. Knowledge is going to be just people's basic understanding. You're not going to have a good governance structure if nobody understands the tools themselves. And so we have to have understanding, we have to have knowledge around the enterprise tools that we're using, and knowledge around the governance structure, and knowledge around our rocket, right? So we need to have a lot of knowledge that is brought together in these governance teams. Expertise. What is the difference between expertise and knowledge, right? Well, somebody once said knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom or expertise is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. So that's kind of what I'm talking about with expertise. You may have a lot of people out there that know a lot about your rocket, but do they really understand the best way to build your Atlassian ecosystem to make your rocket more successful? And again, this speaks to the need of making sure you have people in your governing teams that have the opportunity to speak into the governing processes that are experienced with these tools. By the way, these enterprise governance tools I'm going to talk about today are not just for the Atlassian ecosystem. They're for any software enterprise system you have, whether it's a Google system or a Microsoft system or any kind of system that you might have. And so it's going to be important in any governance structure you build to have folks with expertise that are involved and have the ability to speak into that governance process. And finally, teamwork. Yes, of course, teamwork. We always need teamwork, right? But I don't know how many people of you realize this, but Atlassian's stock ticker symbol that they trade on the open markets is actually TEAM, team. They have built their entire software process around the desire to build good product and software tools for teams. And so we want to preserve that concept when we go into our governance structure as well. Okay, representation, openness, coordination, knowledge, expertise, and teams. That spells rocket, the perfect framework for promoting your Atlassian enterprise governance, right? Okay, let's move off the hokey diagram analogy and into some real stuff that actually matters to us, right? Okay. Governance vision and governance purpose. I put this out front because we're really drilling down to the grassroots level. Where does it really matter for our business, the structures and tools we're doing in our business? So after we get the 10,000 foot level, let's take it down to the 9,000 foot level and say, what is this governance vision really about? And what are the purposes of our governance structure? First of all, the governance vision is this phrase or this sentence that I've put out here: ensuring an ongoing balance between enterprise goals and enterprise growth via flexible controls managed directly by the employees who best understand the purpose and value of Atlassian products across your organization. A lot of the words in this sentence have been chosen very specifically. Balance is important. Flexibility is important. Employees are important, right? Value is important. We need to incorporate the ideas behind these words into our governance vision in order to make sure that we have a flexible governance system that is going to produce the maximum amount of value. How do we do that? We're going to get to that in the coming slides. Okay, governance purpose. The governance body will support the creation, discussion, decision, and implementation of Atlassian products, apps, components, and configuration. That's a mouthful that basically says your governance team, number one, is in a supporting role. Obviously, the governance team needs to implement some policies and practices, and those need to be adhered to by the people that are involved in your enterprise software. However, it is a supporting role, and what it's trying to support is, again, that rocket so that it can achieve maximum success across the different things, activities, decisions, discussions that are happening around your Atlassian tool. Now, keep in mind the back half of this sentence, while it does sound like a mouthful, is really intentional as well. It's not just about your products. There are add-ons and applications that are in the marketplace. Right now, Atlassian has over 3,000 add-ons. A big decision that governance folks will need to make is what kind of add-ons will we bring into the instance? Don't forget, your add-ons are charged to you at the user level of the base product. So if you bring in Tempo timesheets and you have 10,000 users, you're paying for 10,000 users in Tempo timesheets as well. So governance needs to play a role in making decisions around application buy-ins, components, configuration, what parts of your Atlassian products are standardized versus customized across different teams and groups. Lots of different things are going to need to be talked about within this governance team, and they're going to need to be coordinated across the governance team. All right, let's keep going further down into these concepts. Again, the goal I have for us this morning is to start with conceptually and then drive down to the practical. What are some of the practical places where governance is going to show up? I have this diagram of bubbles, bubbles on top of bubbles, right? So the top, whoops, jump to slide there. The top set of bubbles here are going to be around products that exist in the Atlassian ecosystem. The bottom set of bubbles are going to be around the goals and key ideas that you want to frame up around your governance structure. So things like Confluence. Obviously, Confluence is your content repository and your content knowledge sharing tool. Jira Governance, which is where teams get work done. That's also going to include now Jira Align, which is your scaled platform. Source control governance like Bitbucket and Bamboo. Portfolio governance like Advanced Roadmaps or Jira Align. These are the major product platforms that are out there. Each of these products have a certain set of best practices. If you don't know what those best practices are, you are going to find yourself in a situation where the workers are going to be confused. People are going to build different things. Your rocket's going to fly sideways sometimes. So you really want to understand what the best practices are around those tools. Down at the bottom, we've got other things. Atlassian governance policies. What are the policies that are required for your teams? Atlassian best practices, governing bodies. Who constructs the governance, who comprises the governing structure, those governing bodies? How many governing bodies do you have? How many people are in each governing body? We'll get to that next. Atlassian governance framework tools. What good is this entire governance process if we don't have it framed up anywhere where we have openness and visibility that people can see things? And then maybe Atlassian how-to articles. As people learn things and get more experienced at things, who is out there building the how-to articles for the next generation of Atlassian people that are coming through so that we're not repeating the same mistakes? One of the easiest things to do is to solve a problem and then not capture for those folks that are coming behind us the best practices and the lessons we learned when we solved that problem. Inside this diagram are 4 key goals of governance. Everything we do in governance should really focus on these whys. Why do we need governance? Why are we doing what we're doing with governance? It should land on one or more of these 4 goals. Scalable growth. Obviously, that's pretty straightforward. As a company, most of us are trying to grow. Visible control. We want visible control not to just be the opportunity for us to build a good structure or framework around that rocket tower that protects the rocket, but we want it to be visible. We want people to understand, why are we doing what we're doing? How are we doing what we're doing? If I need to do something in governance, how do I go about doing it? Visible control. User ownership. We want this to be motivated primarily from the grassroots, from the bottom up. Of course, we need some executive champions to pay the bills and things like that, and sometimes to make the bigger decisions. But those executive champions should often and almost always be motivated from the user ownership, grassroots, bottom-up information and decisions that are coming to them. And then finally, knowledge sharing. We want this to be open knowledge sharing so that everybody knows what's going on. So those 4 governance goals are going to support the components of our governance structure. All right, we're now down to about the 5,000 foot level, so let's take it down even further. As we think about building out our actual governance structures and our governance frameworks, we need to think about 3 main pillars that are going to show up there. This is really going to be the foundational element of what we build out and use on a day-to-day basis around governance. First of all is governance structure. Governance structure are going to be the people and activities that are happening around governance. These are going to be your governance committees and things like that. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Governance framework. This is going to be the place where people are going to go to see and act on governance activities, okay? Those are probably going to be things like Jira and Confluence, so we'll talk about that later. And then finally, governance policies. Governance policies are going to be those rules and standards that we have set up. They may be broad policies, they may be narrow policies for certain teams that come from lessons learned. They may be dynamic policies. You may find that your policies are changing year over year just due to the growth and change of your business models. Again, we're going to use that change through the process of our structure, governance structure, and governance framework to make sure that we can continue to promote these 4 goals that we talked about earlier. All right, before we get down to the practical, the real, where the rubber meets the road stuff, I do want to just mention, I went into a lot of this in the beginning because of the event we have next week, but just real quick, we are XPM, we are Platinum Solutions partner. We can help you with anything that you need to do in your Atlassian ecosystem. And I'm going to take this opportunity one more time to shamefully promote the big forum that we have next week. And that is going to be our increased ITSM ITIL functionality at decreased cost. If you haven't signed up for this, you'll want to check it out. Just go to xpm.com. It's right on our main page. It's next Tuesday. It's going to be full of really cool stuff, giveaways. Atlassian is going to be speaking at it as well. It's free. There's no cost to you. So go and sign up for that. All right. Let's plow forward into our governance adventures. We are now going to get down to where it really matters. I know that I need to build these things out. I know why I need to have governance. I know what kind of goals and structures I need in governance. How do I go about doing this in a practical way that converts these ideas into something useful? Believe it or not, this is the hardest thing with governance. Concepts of governance, if you ask somebody, well, what does governance mean? Most people are going to be able to give you some kind of definition, but that definition is going to vary maybe from one person to the next, right? It is actually something that a lot of times it's a lot harder to really nail down and put your finger on, especially for larger organizations, than people may think initially. And so we need to have some really practical concepts, some really practical tools that hit people where they are day to day. In order for the control tower to really be useful to the rocket, it needs to be connected to the rocket. There's no way that the control tower is going to be helpful if it's not connected to the rocket. If you ever saw the rocket movies that came out around some of these rockets that went to the moon and things like that, you see these scenes in the movie that are really dramatic where Houston gets disconnected from the rocket because it's on the dark side of the moon. And where's the drama coming from? It's coming from the fact that the control tower is not connected to the rocket. The governance processes, the processes that are promoting a healthy, open, and mitigating risk, that's not connected to the day-to-day activities. And so I can't stress this enough. You need to have the tools, the conversations, and the activities that are connecting those two in order for this to be successful. So what are those? All right, let's jump right into it. First of all, sorry, my PowerPoint is playing around here. I'm going to jump right into Confluence. Confluence is a content portal. It is a fantastic tool for managing documentation, but not just managing documentation, sharing content across teams. We are going to want to build a governance space that is going to be used for your entire organization. This is going to be one of those open spaces, wide spaces. Editing may be controlled, but visibility is going to be wide open to anyone. If anybody joins your organization and as soon as they get connected to Confluence, they should be able to go to this space and see everything they need to know about your governance from day to day. It's going to have your purposes right here, ensure an ongoing balance, blah, blah, blah. We went through this before. It's going to give you some information around governance. Click here for some great articles on enterprise governance. Click here to view our latest YouTube governance video. It's going to give you them some big ideas. Some of these ideas we've been talking about already. Some of them we're going to talk about next. But some of these big ideas around what we do with governance. It's going to have a space directory where people are going to be able to see those three main pillars we talked about: the governance structure, the policies and standards, and of course the governance framework, which is what we're looking at right now in Confluence. It's going to be open and visible for folks to read. One of the things I want to just mention parenthetically is after this webinar, if you're more interested in information, these links here will actually take you to our XPM website, where we have several blogs that talk more about governance and actually give you some case studies around some governance projects that we have done with other companies. So I'm going to click on it here and just go there. So here's some presentations that we've done around governance. Here's some other things that we did around building out governance structures for companies and things like that. That is right on our XPM webpage. If you're there, you just go to blog and you can read those things. Just type in governance in the search bar and you'll find it. The next link I want to take you to, and this is a link where most of our customers actually find us. A lot of our customers either find us through these webinars or they find us through YouTube. So we are out there on YouTube, yes, and this is going to be a link that's going to take you directly to a series of governance videos. Let me jump over to YouTube first and just show you. Our YouTube site has got a whole host of videos that are going to be broken up into three sections. First is going to be longer videos that are webinars, like this video is going to be out there, and other webinars that we do. Second are going to be short, helpful videos that are usually 5 minutes that are out there, and these are called our XPM Expedited Explanations. It's a mouthful, right? And they're quick videos. Jira Align, an overview in less than 10 minutes, right? Very quick stuff. And then finally, we have our latest series of videos, which are a lot of fun, called our Jira Confessions. You can check those out. Those are 4 or 5 minute confessions of our consultants of how they use Jira in their personal life. But if you go to our playlist, you will find an XPM governance series here that we comprise. There's about 12 videos on this governance series. From the years of 2019 to 2020, XPM went around the country. This, of course, was before COVID. We went around the country and did a series of governance forums with Google and Atlassian. We took the best of the presentations from those forums and we put together a governance series. And there's about 12 videos out there that are really, really powerful stuff around this. Takes a lot of what I'm talking about in this 1 hour and goes down a lot deeper into it. So check that out. Just go to YouTube, type in XPM, go to our playlist, and it's right there on the governance series. Okay, so information for your teams on governance. Let me dig down a little bit further into some of these pillars that we talked about. First of all, you're going to need a governance structure. Your governance structure is going to be who is building out the governance structure that is making the decisions, having the conversations around governance. We like to use this model here. You can build your own model. You can expand off of this model. This is what we call the governance triangle. It's really designed for a mid-sized to large enterprise company, maybe somewhere between 75 to 2,000 users. Any more than that, you might need to go into a hub and spoke system. But this is designed to create 3 governing bodies and basically define what their roles are. So we have the Atlassian Steering Committee. That's the top governing body. It's going to be comprised, maybe let's just say you got 1,000 to 2,000 users. Your Atlassian Steering Committee is going to be comprised of maybe 3 to 5 people. One person is going to have to be an executive person that can make big decisions and write big checks. Another person is going to be your key Jira admin or your lead Jira administrator, as well as maybe some high-level division heads or something like that. Their key responsibility is going to be governance management, any decisions that need to boil up to that level, and purchasing. Also, their communication and response is going to be with the other governance groups. So there's going to be probably one person in that group that's going to be a liaison to the other governance groups. The next level down is going to be your practical governance groups. And we break that up into 2 groups, the system admin group and the product admin group. The 2 groups definition is really between your products and your Atlassian products and the platforms on which those products reside, right? So let's say you are managing a on-prem data center platform of Atlassian that is being hosted on Amazon Web Services, right? Things like user and communication software, hardware management, security, compliance, and user access, those will be governed by the system admin group. Things like functional software tools, tool configuration, tool security, and user management within the tool, that will be governed by the product administrative group. If you are on a cloud, a software as a service Atlassian cloud platform, it is likely that you will probably need less people in this system admin group because Atlassian is managing a lot of the admin stuff for you on that system side. Also, something to note about these two groups, the product admin group is probably going to be smaller in number because they're going to be focused on the product side, but they will be more consistent and stable. The system admin group is probably going to be larger in number because there's a variety of different things that might be happening in the system admin group, like an AD admin or an email admin or a server admin, right? So it's going to be a broader group, but the people involved in conversations may be more dynamic depending on the particular issue that we're resolving at that point in time. Okay, so there's probably going to be one or two people from each one of these groups that are going to be liaisoning up to the Atlassian steering committee. Down at the bottom, we have a foundation of product managers, project managers, development managers, and maybe even users that are going to be feeding information and needs into this governing structure. And very likely, many people that are represented in this blue box are actually members of the governing bodies themselves. Again, remember, we want to have a grassroots governance body, and we want decisions to be driven by what's practically happening within the rocket itself. So what better way to do that other than having the people that are operating and building the rocket and making the money for the company and using the Atlassian tools be the ones that are part of the representation in the Atlassian governance committees. Okay, so there's some ideas around that structure. Let me show you a little bit more about how this structure can break out into this open visibility concept that we want. So here's our governance structure. People can see very clearly how that's done for the different tools. There's some diagrams that help people understand at a 10,000 foot level how things work. But there's also going to be the different groups. Here's our Atlassian steering committee. Here are the purpose, the structure, the members, the meetings around the Atlassian steering committee. Very open information. Here are our members. We can see who they are. You may know one or two of these people. You may talk to one of them. Maybe you even have an open position. And here you have a Jira ticket that's being brought into the Confluence Atlassian steering committee page to designate the fact that John Smith is being nominated for the position, and it's currently in the voting status right now. We'll talk about the activities that happen around governance in a little while. Activities are done in Jira. Information is done in Confluence. So we'll get back to that in a little bit. You might have some meeting notices down here that happened. You may have some open items, action items, and things like that. That's the steering committee. Under the product admin group, same thing. You might have the purpose of the product admin group, the structure. You might have the people that are involved in them, the meeting notes, and things like that. Now, notice we are utilizing the Atlassian framework itself for Atlassian governance. What that means is that we should be looking for opportunities for efficiency and communication as well. We don't necessarily need to have a on our calendar every week meeting, right? We can utilize the tools to save us from having multiple meetings. What we're doing over here in this example I showed earlier is we're utilizing the tools for a nominee to actually vote on that nominee using the Jira tool itself. We can do the same thing with the product group when it comes to processing requests that are coming in, right? We'll talk about that a little bit later on when we get to the actual workflow around those governance requests that come in. Okay, then you're also going to have the Atlassian systems admin group and what their purpose is. Notice that the list of people here may be more diverse as far as what pillar in the company they are working for. Here we have another open position and things like that. You might have also a decision log down here that's going to give you an idea of different things that were decided on or decisions that we're working on. Any kind of open visibility around the governance structure is going to be valuable. Okay, that is your governance structure. Now let's talk a little bit about the next pillar, which is going to be your policies and your standards. Your policies and standards are going to be broken down into detailed documents as well as high-level organization and configuration things. Here we have a series of policies that Atlassian implements as best practices when it comes to building out things like Jira projects and Confluence spaces. We do this in all of our bootcamp classes. We actually walk through each of these diagrams to help people learn how to build out Jira projects and best practices around those projects. You might have a policy and standard breakout by administrators and users. You might have it by division. You can do it however you want. But the key point here is to actually capture the different policies and standards that you have come up with. Here's a few of them: archiving projects or database element maintenance, integrations, user access configuration, right? These are going to be things that are going to be policies that the governance team has put together. Here's some policies for users. What are workflows and how do workflows work? What are status and resolution policies? Which of these are standardized versus customized? Things like that, right? Okay, these policies can be dynamic. Look, we have a section on policies in progress. These are policies that are actively being written. Writing a policy is an action, which means that you not only need to have the policies in progress in here, you need to actually have the issues in Jira that are tracking the actions of writing those policies. So here we actually have a filter from Jira that is identifying all the policies that we are currently writing. And you can actually go into Jira to see where that policy is and the different things about it, or you can look at this log and see it here, okay? Those are our policies and our standards. That can be as robust or as simple as you need. If you're a smaller organization, it's probably going to be small. As you grow an enterprise, this is going to grow more and more, and you're going to actually need to get into the discussion of how do we even organize these policies and standards, because we have so many of them, and what is our structure around updating them. Okay, policies and standards. Down here at the bottom, you may have other things. Again, this is going to be your open knowledge sharing tool for governance. So you might have some things around how-to articles. Every time somebody has success with a tool or with an add-on or something like that, have them write a how-to article and put it in here. This can be open knowledge sharing. If somebody's going to implement Zephyr, or if somebody's going to do a migration off of Zephyr into Jira Service Management, right? What history do we have around that somebody can look at and use? By the way, don't forget, Confluence is not just a document tool, it is also a content management and content repository tool, which means this link to Zephyr may not take you to a document. It may take you to a series of links that sends you to other spaces in Confluence where other teams experience different things and have a whole series of things. It may even send you to a project, a link to a project in Jira. We are currently working on Zephyr. Right? It can be whatever you want. This is what's so great about Confluence, is it can either be direct information, or it can be links to information in other places in the world, even things outside of Atlassian. You can have things linked to SharePoint and Confluence and stuff like that. By the way, if you're not familiar with Confluence, we have a Confluence webinar that we do and a Confluence bootcamp class. So this is a fantastic tool for open knowledge sharing. I can't recommend it enough. Okay, there may be other things down here like meeting notes and things like that. Let's say you're going through a governance implementation process. You may have a governance roadmap here as well. Whatever information you want to share with your people. But just know this will grow over time, which means that there's going to be a need to have somebody in your governance bodies be responsible for coordinating and organizing the information on your Confluence page. Okay, Confluence, a great tool to connect the practical activity with the rocket, with the governance activity, with the control tower, in the form of open knowledge sharing, in the form of content management, in the form of policies and structures and things like that. Okay, let's now talk about actions. So this is just content, right? This is just static information for the most part that is helping people understand what to do, what's happening, who's in what governing bodies and things like that. There's going to be a whole slew of activities around governance as well. And for activities, we want to look at Jira. So we looked at this earlier in the webinar. The dashboard for governance is a great place to sum up all the activities that are happening. We have a filter results with the Atlassian governance issues, identifying what issues are currently out there and what their status is, who the assignee is. We have a pie chart as well. Don't forget your gadgets here on your dashboard have the ability to link directly to anything. So every gadget is a series of links. So if I just click on this link here, it will take me to the 2 issues that are currently under annual policy, right? You can do a 2-dimensional filter statistic. You can do another statistic here that shows the different percentage completion of the issues, all kind, even an activity stream, right? All kinds of things that are going to show you what's happening. All of this is feeding from a project. We recommend that the governance activities be focused on a single universal project that is managed by the governing bodies. You don't have to do it that way, but we found that works really well. And why that's important is because as your rocket is going crazy, making money and creating value, blah, 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 right? There are a lot of people doing a lot of different things. And you're going to really start creating some risk of wasted time and redundancy if activities and documentation is not managed in one place. Also, you may come up with conflicts. Also, who knows how the different teams that are doing different things in your company may in the future be connected to each other. It's so much better if while you're building things, you're building them out across a standard with all teams so that in the future, if any teams wind up coming together and being connected, they're already on the same standardized platform than it is to have everybody build their own tower of power. And then you bring 2 teams together and you have to spend months trying to figure out how to meld them together. I worked for 15 years. I worked for a Fortune 500 company in management. And one of the things a lot of big companies do is they tend to shuffle around management from different groups to another. They like to do that for a lot of reasons, but quite often you will have 2 teams that were completely reporting under different HR structures. All of a sudden in the new year, they're now working under the same vice president, right? And so it's really important to work from the very beginning with building the structure from a standardized standpoint, not only with your content that we talked about in Confluence, but more importantly, with your activity around governance as well. So we strongly recommend having all your activity in one governance project. What could that governance project look like? Let me actually, I have it right here, I think. So the governance project is going to be a series of activities that are going to have workflows that define what's happening with the governance needs. Okay, so like I tell people that are new to Jira, Jira answers 3 questions. What am I trying to do? How am I trying to solve it? And what data do I need to solve that and to report on it later? You're going to ask the same questions with your governance activities. What governance needs do I have? How am I going to solve those governance needs? What's the process from beginning to end? And what data do I need to collect in that process in order to complete it successfully and report on it later? Don't forget, governance is very open, visible, being used by multiple people. So the data you collect is going to be important to make sure you can move it through the process efficiently. You don't want to have to create a bunch of meetings that you have to have with people because you're not capturing the right data in the process as you're trying to solve a governance issue. So what are some of the things? Let's start with that first question. What are we trying to solve? And when we talk about some of those, we'll talk about how we solve them as well. So if I look at the ideas around governance activities, you might have something like a nomination workflow, right? We have a governance structure where we have people that are in these governing bodies. Occasionally people leave. We need to bring more people in. So why not use Jira to create a ticket? We might have a workflow that's something like this. We have a nomination process. We actually use the voting switch in the Jira ticket to have people go out and vote on people. And then we can go through an appointment process where the person gets the most votes, gets presented to the steering committees and gets approved or something like that. How about a policy change workflow, right? We have policies, but we want them to be dynamic to meet our needs. So periodically, we might need to go through a policy process. This is kind of like a documentation workflow. We've got a draft, we've got in review. There might be a second review that sends it back to draft, it gets approved, et cetera, right? How about if a user wants to purchase an add-on? I've got 1,000 users in my instance, and Bob decides that he wants a new add-on. Well, we know that's going to cost us the price times 1,000 users. So is there a way we can manage that in governance? What if we have a user product request workflow? You can do the same thing also with a user system request workflow. Let's take a look at an example of how that might work. So here's Bob. He wants to buy, add-on XYZ. And so he's going to open a ticket. The first thing he's going to do, we're going to tell him as a governing body, this is, we're not going to have him just punt this ticket to the governing body and have the governing body just have to make a decision without any information from the ground, right? We want this to be grassroots. We're going to have Bob do some research. We're going to have to figure out what kind of impact does this add-on have? What does the add-on do? The next thing we might need Bob to do is gather some interest. Bob is one person in a team of 10 people, in a group of 100 people, in a user group of 1,000 people. Can he start talking to his team or start talking to other groups that might be interested in this add-on? Of course he can. Maybe we can use the voting ticket, the voting item, to allow other people that Bob talks to vote this up so that it can be of a broader interest to people. At some point in this gathering interest process, we may decide that it has hit the level where it is ready now to be presented to the governing bodies. Maybe we have 100 votes on it or 200 votes on it, or maybe 10 teams that voted on it, right? Notice at this point in the process, we haven't involved any governing bodies yet. We haven't required governing bodies to come and meet in rooms or anything, right? This is just a self-managed process at this point. The tool is managing the process. In fact, notice that we might have a presentation eventually to the governing bodies, and then the governing bodies may decide to put this on hold or close it. In other words, reject the purchase. Back here in the research process, one of the first things Bob should have done is done a research on checking out historic issues to see if this add-on was ever brought to the governing body in the past. If it was, all that research has been done already, and all it is up to Bob to decide, has something changed from the past that would allow this to move from being on hold to back into play, or maybe from being rejected to being accepted. Okay, after it's been presented, it might get approved. Once it gets approved, it then goes to purchasing. Purchasing can be its own workflow as well. And I have another workflow I can show you on that. And then configuration. This is when we're going to need to bring the product admin group and the system admin group into play to determine if there's any system or product impacts into the configuration process. What is this doing with the tool? If you guys are familiar with Jira, you know that when you build an add-on, that add-on sometimes shows up right at the top of the page. Users are going to see that and be confused what that's all about. Do we need to do any pre-configuration to turn that off or to block certain people from doing things? That's in the configuration. And then finally, documentation. This goes right back to our Confluence place, where people that see that this tool has been added can then go to Confluence and see the documentation on how to use it. And who better to write the documentation than our friend Bob, who brought this up in the first place. So maybe we get Bob to put a team together to build the documentation, and then we can close the ticket. Much of this process is self-managed. All of this process is completely open and visible to everyone. By the way, the purchase workflow I talked about, when it comes time to purchase an add-on, could be done here. This is just a typical purchasing workflow that might go through the purchasing group or whatever. So there's a couple of other things. What if you have a variance? Somebody violates a policy, or there's just something that happens and you need to research it. You might have a variance thing that comes up here as well. So different investigation or whatever, maybe a variance, then maybe that translates into a policy adjustment, right? Maybe at the end of on this modification post function, we automatically create a policy issue type or something like that. So, okay, so we are really tying the grand ethereal concepts of governance into where your people are working on a day-to-day basis. Somebody's frustrated with a tool. How do they go? Where do they go through the process? First of all, they come into Confluence. Is there anything in Confluence around the governance process that we know that will help them with the frustration of the tool? How-to articles, policies, things like that. Second of all, he needs to accomplish something that he can't accomplish. Is that something that he can do with an add-on? He can go through a process of the add-on. He can submit questions to the governing bodies and things like that. Members of the governing bodies can respond to the question. If you know anything about Jira, you know that there's a comment section in every Jira ticket, so there can be an ongoing dialogue around it. Atlassian actually uses this process themselves. If you have problems with an Atlassian product and submit a ticket to Atlassian, you will often see that there are hundreds of tickets out there around open issues that Atlassian is processing. This is exactly what Atlassian's doing. They're building a governance framework of tickets around the action items of the problems they're having with their product. And it solves a lot of problems. It does it efficiently. You can route the right people to answering the questions. You can give people the history of the comments behind the activities. People can vote on things. You can create subtasks around individual things that are needing to be done in order to solve the bigger problem. It goes on and on, right? Okay, so I could talk all day about this kind of stuff because it's really cool, and I really like the way this helps companies become much more efficient. But I'm going to wrap it up now because we have about 10 minutes left in this webinar. I have taken you guys all the way up from the rocket in the control tower, which is kind of a quirky analogy, all the way down to where the rubber meets the road, and you can actually build out your Jira and Confluence framework around the governance structure and governance policies. I'm going to close this off now on my part of it. I do want to take a few minutes and open it up for questions before we wrap up. If you have any questions at all, again, let me take you back to my presentation. My name again is Steve Sarelmas. I appreciate you guys listening to me today. If you are interested in any upcoming webinars we have, here is the list of the ones that we do. Again, we do webinars every Thursday at 11 a.m. Central Time. You can go to our website and see all of those webinars just going to Expium and then click right here on events, all events right here. Again, if you haven't registered for our ITSM forum next week, make sure to do that. You will not want to miss that. Let me get back here and answer you guys' questions before we wrap this up. If you have a question, just put it into the Q&A section in Zoom. Okay, so one question that came in was, this is all really good information. It's a little overwhelming. What do we do if we want to get started with something like this? So of course, I'm going to tell you that Expium can help you with this. That's what we do, right? But let me tell you a little bit about high-level process of how we help people with this. Back before COVID, we would go on site and we would actually build out a governance process for people in a week. Now, it required some dedicated resources, but we could go on site and put this whole thing, everything I've showed you here, we could put it together in about a week. And the way we would normally do that is the first part of the week, Monday, Tuesday, we would have meetings with all of the teams and talk to them about what we were doing. I'd basically present kind of what we're doing here. Then on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we would sit down with the core people like the Jira admin and a couple of other people and build out the framework, right? And then on Thursday, Friday, we would then meet with all the teams again, you know, however many teams, 7, 8, 10 teams, and we would present the framework that we built to kind of train them on how to use the tool. And then from there, we would just iterate, right? We have a huge philosophy here at Expium that build a minimum viable product, iterate after that, right? So after that, we set people on to go on their own and we iterate on it. And if they need help, we're there to help them in the future. One of the things that's super important for that to work and be that efficient is we have to make sure that we have some sort of executive buy-in. You cannot implement a governance process without some sort of executive buy-in. You'll just run. We would come on site and we would just spend all week having conversations and arguments and discussions. And at the end of the week, we wouldn't have built anything. But that's really a good first step. Recognize the need, start to populate the need among folks, get some executive buy-in, and then bring someone in like Expium to sit down with the teams, explain how to build it out for you, and then explain how to use the tool. And then we could follow up with you also on supporting that process after the fact if you need that. That's been really successful for us and for other companies. Again, I can't overemphasize those 4 main goals that we talked about early on, that open knowledge sharing, that idea of, that's this slide right here, this idea of scalable growth, visible control, open ownership, and knowledge sharing. That's going to be the golden ticket for a successful governance implementation. Okay, hey, we are almost out of time here. If you have any other questions, don't hesitate to email me. This is my email address right here, steve.terelmas@expium.com. If you have any questions regarding Atlassian at all, reach out to us. And also, I do want to mention too, if you're in the ecosystem at all, you're licensing with Atlassian tools. If you're not licensing with a partner like Expium, it's very likely you're paying too much for your licenses. If you are licensing directly with Atlassian, reach out to me. I know it doesn't make sense, but we actually can usually get people cheaper licenses than licensing directly with Atlassian. It's another thing Atlassian does to promote their partnerships. And so just reach out to me. I can explain it to you more later. But we could probably save you some money on your licenses. Okay, thanks so much for paying attention and going on this little journey with us, this very fast journey with us on Atlassian governance. If you have any other questions in the future, be sure to reach out to us. Take care and happy adventures in your Atlassian ecosystem.